Hello and welcome to the UnDeletable Dad podcast. My name is Tracy Poisner, and this is episode 45 of this podcast. If you're wondering where all the other episodes are, I encourage you to go and look for them wherever you listen to podcasts. It's on Apple Podcasts, on iTunes, on Google, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere you want to look. UnDeletable Dad. So, episode 45 is about whether or not you're encouraging or enabling bad behavior if you don't respond to it. And specifically, it's about a certain situation that I want to talk about today. Like, I get asked all the time, if I don't react to my child doing hurtful things to me, isn't that just encouraging their bad behavior? How do I respond when my child is saying or doing something that hurts my feelings? So, the answer to this is going to sound a little counterintuitive, um, but it's really central to the kind of parenting that you are being called on to do in this post divorce world. I know that you want to be able to say, hey, that really hurts my feelings that you're telling lies about me, just for instance. Or why don't you ever return my calls or messages? I do so many nice things for you and you don't even say thank you. So, those are all things that you probably would have done automatically in the old days, right? When you were living together with your ex, with their mother. Um, it might have even been the right thing to do, but it is not necessarily the right thing to do anymore. I'm going to talk about why that is. Okay, there's a different context now after this divorce situation. You've probably already figured that out. That's why you're watching this, right? So you need to see your place in the dynamic a little differently if you want to be able to parent effectively. I want to tell you about a conversation that I had once with a therapist who wanted to know how to help her client who was being alienated from, well, from all of his kids, but one in particular who was a teenage daughter. And this therapist wanted my help to understand how best to resolve this situation. And her impulse was to try to broker some kind of conversation where they could air their feelings, and specifically where the therapist can encourage the daughter to say something that would help the dad to feel better because he was really suffering a lot from this situation. And what I said to the therapist really shocked her. I said, it's not this girl's job to take care of her father's feelings. If he has hurt feelings, he needs to deal with that. It's never the job of the child to manage their parents' feelings. And so she was pretty kind of stunned, and it's so obvious, but it's so counterintuitive because we want to think that everybody's feelings, that we should help each other in our feelings. We've been told, there is so much noise, let's say, from society around how your feelings are important and they should be validated. So these days, everything is about our feelings. So, how do we take care of our own feelings if it's not the job of someone else to make us feel better? Well, for starters, I want to repeat that as you, the father, are working on your own feelings, you have to know for sure that it is never, ever the job of a child to be the emotional caretaker of their parent. And it doesn't feel to you like that's what you're doing because your child has done something wrong and you just want them to put it right so that you feel better. But it's complicated, okay? And the part where you want to feel better, you have to feel better even without that thing happening. That's what I'm going to talk about, okay? Because probably already the mom is leaning on this child to behave in a certain way that makes her feel better. That's how we got into this situation, okay? It's not a generic um, circumstance where a child is just behaving badly towards you, okay? There's a lot of conflict happening and the child feels responsible for their mother's emotional well-being. That's what's driving this behavior in the first place, okay? So if your child, your teenager, let's just say, was was being entitled or rude towards you just as a part of normal teenage development, because kids do that, right? It wouldn't hurt your feelings. It would disappoint you. You might be angry. Um, you might be offended, but it wouldn't hurt your feelings in the same way, right? So, hurt feelings are different. You get hurt because you are sensitive to something already on the inside of you. You perceive, in this case, if your child is telling you that they don't want to see you, they don't want to come over, they don't want to talk to you, they don't want any interaction with you, you are sensitive to feeling rejected. If you weren't, it wouldn't hurt you. You would be in a mode of trying to figure out what your child is going through and the best way to help them. Sometimes the best way to help them is to, you know, give them a spiritual smack upside the head, not a real one, of course. Sometimes that is the way to help them, but not if it's coming from your place of hurt and wanting to hurt someone else back. I hope that makes sense, okay? So if this feeling of being rejected that you're receiving is like a knife in the chest. It really does hurt, and you have to take care of that, but not by not by expecting your child now to make you feel better, okay? Because this sensitivity belongs to you. I always say, like, if you have a toddler who throws two handfuls of mushy peas off their high chair tray and hits you on your white shirt, like, are you insulted by that? Are you like, is that disrespectful or something? No, you don't expect a toddler, like, that they're just doing something and they don't understand the consequence of it. They don't know that now you have to go and change your shirt. You're going to be late for work. It's got to go to the cleaners. Like, they don't know any of that stuff. They're just playing with stuff and gravity and showing their emotions, right? So little by little, we start to ascribe to our kids some understanding of what they're doing. And you have to believe me when I say that a teenager who tells you that they don't want to see you anymore is not aware of what they are actually doing in terms of the feeling that it produces inside of you. They just know what they have to do for their own well being. Okay. So if you want to feel better inside of yourself, you have to now take the next step. Okay. And realize that you are asking your child to do something for you. And in this particular case, what you're asking them to do is to let go of what is a survival strategy for them so that you can survive instead. Like, take off that life jacket and give it to me. That's what you're asking them to do, okay? Because whatever they're doing, rejecting you, lying about you, refusing to see you, all of those things are being done in a context of what the child feels they need to do for survival. This is this is about their relationship with their mother, what you're seeing, okay? Your child believes that this action is necessary to receive love from their mother that feels like a survival need for them. A child cannot live without the love of their parents. And strangely, they know that your love is unconditional. That's the weird part about this. They know your love is unconditional, and the other parent's love is conditional on behaving in this way, on rejecting you or being in your face or whatever it is that they're doing. Okay. So, the love of the other parent is conditional on the child playing a game. The game has rules, and this is part of the rules of the game. Okay. You can't ask your child to just tell the truth instead of telling lies about you. You can't ask them to answer your calls or even to acknowledge that they're being bullied or blackmailed, emotionally blackmailed by their mother, because doing those things would require the child to essentially cut ties with their mother. They would have to be ready to cut their mother off in order to stop playing that game, right? And they don't think they can do that and still survive. And there are two reasons for that. One is because they feel responsible for her happiness. They've taken that on as 99% of kids do. That's a thing. Kids feel often responsible for their parents' welfare or happiness. The other thing is that they don't think that they'll be worthy of being loved if they stop playing this game. So it's really a very, very complicated thing going on in the survival part of the brain, not here in the frontal cortex where the thinking part happens, okay? This is not a logical or a rational thing. You can't have a conversation with someone who is in this state of mind because you're not even going to be talking with a person who has words to describe what's happening, okay? This is happening deep, deep in the limbic system of the brain where our fight or flight reflex lives, okay? Deep emotional part of the brain. And it's like they're drowning. And this thing that they're doing is their life jacket. And so they are not going to let anybody take this life jacket from them. They're going to go down kicking and screaming. And that's what you see when this kind of thing is happening. You see a lot of illogical kicking and screaming and shouting and tantruming because they're holding so tightly to this irrational life jacket that they think they need, right? That's what these tantrums are about that never go anywhere. They can't even tell you why they're upset or why they're angry at you or what you might have done that makes them not want to come over or see you anymore, okay? They're just lashing out like, get your bloody hands off my life jacket, okay? So this therapist who I spoke to, like, what was she supposed to tell her client who was hurting so badly if he couldn't address his feelings in some way with his daughter to come to, like what we want to have is some kind of logical resolution to this, the way people do who hurt each other's feelings, right? And from his side, like if he doesn't address this, isn't he enabling this bad behavior? Isn't he encouraging like more and more of this kind of thing to happen if he doesn't put something in place to make it stop? So the reason this is not a normal situation where people come together and sort out their differences is because these aren't really differences, right? This is a survival strategy of the child, and it's actually a pretty damn good one. Because if dad's love is unconditional, meaning whatever I do, I know he's going to love me, and mom's love is conditional on me playing a game, this is the way to get what you need from both of them. This is an effective strategy for the moment. It's not a healthy situation, but for a child who's in the middle of this unhealthy, toxic situation, this is a pretty damn good survival strategy. So you need to take that in, okay? As you are hurting, that number one, you can't ask the child to give up this survival strategy. And number two, it's on you to figure out how to feel better without asking your child to give up their life jacket. So what I wanted to add is that your child has no ability to see you as a regular human being with feelings that they can hurt. Okay. Like I often say, how old were you when you figured out that your dad was just a regular guy like you? And that's something that often doesn't happen till our at least 20s, if not 30s or older, right? Until you understand that your own father is just a dude. It takes a great deal of maturity to see our parents as flawed and vulnerable human beings. So what I told the therapist was this. I said, he doesn't have to ask his daughter to give up her life jacket or to make a choice about who she wants to love her. He can respond to this by showing up as a dad and saying that he bloody well doesn't approve of this kind of behavior, that it is not correct to ghost someone who sends you messages and not ever answer them. It's not correct to see someone's name on the phone and never pick up the phone. Okay? Like he can be the guy who is teaching her how to go out in the world because that's what a father does. And he can say, this is not correct. I don't approve of that kind of behavior. Okay? This is not a successful life strategy. He can say that as long as he's her father, he's going to call her out on this kind of bullshit because that's his job. And he might be the only person in the world who loves her enough to tell her the truth when she's behaving badly. And again, the therapist was kind of silent, because this is the thing. If this is a moment for you to stand up in your fatherhood and not in your woundedness, right? You stand up in your fatherhood and you say, this is not pleasing me as your father. This is not how I raised you. I don't tolerate this kind of behavior. And I don't want to think of you behaving this way to other people, because that's not how I raised you. That's the attitude. Okay. I heard recently a story about a dad who did exactly this kind of thing. And I'm just going to repeat it because I thought it was wonderful. Okay. This was a dad who was being alienated from his kids, and they were in family therapy to try to work out this situation of like, what does this mean that you don't ever want to see your dad? What did he do to you? Why is he a bad guy? Why don't you like him? Why aren't you comfortable at his house? Right? Therapist was probing and probing. And they finished their session. They went out into the parking lot where the mom had come to pick them up, and he was walking his kids to their mom's car when his oldest child turned around and screamed at him, "What don't you get about this? We just don't want to see you, okay? Like, when are you going to figure that out?" And he got right back in her face and he said, "As long as I'm a dad and you're my child, it is my job to keep showing up. And when you're 18, you can decide if you never want to see me again. But until then, I'm going to keep loving you and showing up as your dad, no matter what you say or do, because that's what a dad is about." And did that ever shut her up? And maybe not in the moment that, like, like the scene plays out like a movie and everybody goes away happy. But the end of that story is that at some point, this dad actually got full custody, full, or, primary placement of his kids. And little by little, their relationship has become very deep and satisfying for all of them. Okay. So you would do well to rehearse some kind of speech like this, right? Like, I'm your dad. I'm going to keep showing up, because that's what a dad does. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not. It's my job as a father to keep showing up for you because I love you. And potentially even, I love you enough to tell you stuff that nobody else will ever tell you. I love you enough to take your anger, because it's my job to be that guy. I'll be that guy who takes the heat for telling you what you need to hear. Okay? That's a very powerful place to be. So, back to the concept of whether or not you're encouraging them or training them to keep doing this bad thing, okay? You can only be encouraging them to do a bad thing if you respond to what they're doing from your own victim kind of place, right? From your victim archetype, from these psychological archetypes that I like to work with. And I talk so much about those on other episodes of the podcast, okay? Like, if you let them believe that they're winning by showing up in your victim self, where you feel like you're powerless against your own child, or if you like show up in a child archetype where you neglect what's happening because you're operating from an illusion that you're on the same level somehow as your child, like that this is some kind of, playground altercation, right? That you need somebody, a higher person, to sort out for you, a therapist, a judge, a lawyer, right? Like that the two of you are somehow on the same level and you need someone else to come in and break up your fight, right? That would be kind of a child energy. So that happens when you're in your child archetype. You can't see a bigger picture, a bigger context, because that's the adult view, to take a bigger view, okay? So the child can't see their parent as flawed, and they really do believe that they are responsible for their mother's happiness, in this case, their mom, right? So they would be shocked to imagine that you might require the same thing of them. That's unthinkable, okay? They actually think that you are invulnerable. And that is the most twisted part of this whole thing. I posted this in my Facebook group the other day, the Undeletable Dad Facebook group, which you're welcome to join if you're not already there. And I posted that exact phrase, that your child actually thinks you are invulnerable. And that is the most twisted part of this whole situation. And somebody wrote in 100% truth, right? You can probably sense that even. They're certain that you can take what you're dishing out. That's why it's like a life preserver for them, because you are the one underneath keeping them afloat. And that's what you need to take in. Okay. So I'm just going to say that the feeling better part is where coaching or counseling comes into the picture. Okay. Because everybody needs some help to upgrade themselves to where they can be masters of their own emotional energy, right? Um, you also need to surround yourself with people who support you, who believe in you, who understand the journey that you're on. Okay. Spend less time with the naysayers, spend more time with people who are nourishing you in some way. Okay. Like, it's not always so easy to find out there in the wild. That's why there are all these support groups, especially online. It's great if you can find a local one with like real human beings that you can see face to face, but lots of support groups exist online. One of them is my Undeletable Dad group, as I was just mentioning, on Facebook. You're welcome to join us there. If you prefer something off social media, you might consider joining a paid program like my Patronus College, which is going to start up again sometime in September. It's not sometime, it is starting up again in September of 2023, whenever you're watching this. And that's where I teach exactly this kind of emotional mastery to divorced dads. Okay. It is also a fantastic peer group of other alienated fathers who get together every couple of weeks at the Dark Horse Pub online to, you know, prop each other up over a beer, the way guys like to do. It is a very wonderful community. And last year's alumni in Patronus College really, really appreciated both the training and the peer support that they got from other dads there. So this is not the old school parenting that you thought you were signing up for. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. Okay. You are going to have to be infinitely more sophisticated than the kind of dad that you were maybe expecting to be. But that's not such a bad thing, really, because it is a chance for you to liberate a cartload of personal power that is trapped inside of you. Okay. It's an opportunity for you to find a place for all of those masculine codes that you've been hiding away since society started labeling them toxic masculinity. Okay. It's time to reconnect your natural masculinity with the exercise of fatherhood in your life. That's our mission here at Undeletable Dad. Okay. To get you back up onto your steed and to ride faster and farther and with more purpose and conviction than you would ever have done if this situation, this whole divorce situation, had not happened to you. Okay. So please think seriously about reaching out for guidance, for peer support. I'm around. You can reach me at tracy@undeletabledad.com. There we go. And I welcome your comments below. Okay. You can tag me below and I'll be happy to get in touch. Thanks. Thanks for watching. Go listen to the podcast.